Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. The nation gets ready for one of the oldest rivalries in football. We bring you the latest from Wembley Stadium. UEFA asks the UK government to forgo quarantine for overseas fans coming to the finals. And the Tories lost a very safe seat to the Liberal Democrats, sending a shockwave through British politics. With less than an hour to go before kickoff, the UK is looking forward to tonight's Euro 2020 battle between England and Scotland. Neil Woodrow brings us this report from Wembley Stadium.
For the first time in 25 years, the two teams are facing off in a major tournament. The England and Scotland fans are pouring in and not even the weather can dampen their spirits. For Scotland, it's their first major tournament since the 1998 World Cup. At training on Thursday with brighter weather, the team prepared for the Group D face-off. But before they clash on the pitch, Scotland will join England in taking a knee against racism. England have said they will take a knee before all of their matches. It's a topic that's been a talking point in the UK over the last year. Earlier this week, I spoke to Conservative MP for Bracknell, James Sunderland, for his opinion on the matter.
I respect the right of the players to conduct themselves as they wish to, as they need to. And clearly, racism is abhorrent everywhere. It's abhorrent in football. So I commend any attempt, of course, to kick out racism from football.
But he says that sporting events should not be politicised.
And my view is that we should be keeping politics out of sport as much as we can. The Home Secretary referred to this as gesture politics. I agree with her.
Home Secretary Priti Patel told GB News this week that it's all well to support a cause, but the impact on policing during Black Lives Matter protests last year was devastating.
The fans have mixed views as well. It's causing quite a mess.
Yeah, I think they're aware. I think the fans are also aware. I'm not going to criticise the players at all because I'm a huge football fan. I love my national team, supported them since I was a kid. They've got a very good chance of doing well in this tournament and, let's hope they win it. I think they really can.
England are full of confidence after their opening match, having avenged their 2018 World Cup semi-final defeat by Croatia. Victory for England would seal their place in the last 16 of the tournament with one game to spare, while defeat for Scotland would leave their hopes in tatters. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
UEFA and the government are negotiating how big the crowds can be for the finals. Neil brings us more from Wembley Stadium.
Thanks, Stuart. The atmosphere here is one of anticipation as fans get ready for another episode of one of the oldest rivalries in football. Hopefully the game will have more drama than the goalless draw when these teams first met in 1872. Off the pitch, UEFA is negotiating with Whitehall, hoping to lift quarantine restrictions for overseas fans for the semi-finals and final at Wembley Stadium. Under current regulations, people travelling from countries on the amber list must quarantine for 10 days on arrival. Apart from the three British teams, all other competing countries are on the amber list except Turkey, which is on the red list. The Times reports that UEFA also wants 2,500 VIPs to be exempt from having to self-isolate on arrival. The paper says UEFA is even threatening to move the final to Budapest. Hungary will have relaxed border restrictions for travel from next week. The UK government has agreed to increase the capacity at Wembley to 50% for the knockout stage, meaning crowds of 40,000. But with plans to lift remaining restrictions delayed, the goal of a full capacity Wembley final looks unlikely to be scored. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Wembley, London.
Sponsorship has become a hot topic at the Euros, but England coach Gareth Southgate says sponsorship has its place in football. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more.
England football coach Gareth Southgate says sponsors provide money at all levels that help sport to function.
Particularly grassroots sport in our country requires a lot of investment, and without some of those companies investing, then very difficult to provide the facilities that we need.
Speaking on Thursday, Southgate referred to recent moves by Portugal captain Cristiano Ronaldo and France midfielder Paul Pogba, who moved aside drink bottles provided by Euro 2020 sponsors.
Obviously, the two guys had different rationale for the two stances they took. But you know, there's always a bigger picture to these things, I think.
Pogba removed a bottle of Heineken at the post-match press conference on Tuesday. It's unclear whether he realised it was zero-alcohol beer. Following the two stunts, UEFA reminded participating teams they have contractual obligations towards sponsors. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Bavaria's interior minister says police snipers were close to shooting at a protester who parachuted into a Munich stadium at the Euros on Tuesday. The protester used a powered paraglider, but lost control after hitting steel cables attached to the stadium's roof. He then careened over spectators' heads before landing on the field ahead of Germany's game against France.
Because of the inscription Greenpeace, they decided at the last second not to shoot at his perpetrator. Otherwise, it would have possibly ended fatally for himself.
Debris fell on the field and main grandstand, narrowly missing France's coach. 2 people needed to be treated at a hospital and police are investigating. A historic win for the Liberal Democrats in Chesham and Amersham as they took the seat from the Conservatives for the first time in 47 years. The Lib Dem leader says the win sends a shockwave through British politics. NTD's Jane Well breaks this down.
The Lib Dem victory in Chesham and Amersham is a significant loss for the Conservative Party. The Lib Dems overturned the seat in the south of England that has always been Conservative. Sarah Green won the seat with over 21,000 votes, a majority of more than 8,000. Lib Dem leader Ed Davey rather boldly tweeted, "The blue wall can be smashed by the Lib Dems," referring to the traditionally blue stronghold in the south of England. Defeated Tory MP Peter Fleet said he was very disappointed, saying the Lib Dems threw the kitchen sink, the dog, the cat and more at the constituency. Issues of concern locally include the HS2 rail line which cuts through the area and the government's proposed planning changes. For Labour it was bad news, they only got just over 600 votes. This result raises questions over the Tory strategy of focusing on making gains in Labour's stronghold in the north. It might cost them votes in the south, though one yellow brick doesn't mean the whole wall will collapse. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
The Information Commissioner today expressed deep concern about the misuse of facial recognition in public places. She warns that supercharged CCTV could be used inappropriately, excessively, or even recklessly. Elizabeth Denham's opinion report says people should be able to take their children out without having their biometric data collected. She said when sensitive personal data is collected on a mass scale without people's knowledge, choice or control, the impacts could be significant. The controversial technology has been under the spotlight in recent years over fears it may invade people's privacy. The Commissioner says that it's not too late to put the genie back in the bottle. And in other news, the US is removing its 25% tariff on Scotch whiskey. But British tariffs on American whiskey are still in place. NTD's Patrick Hayden brings us the details.
The US has removed trade tariffs on Scotch whiskey and most other spirits, but tariffs still remain on American whiskies going to the UK. US whiskey industry was experiencing double-digit growth on its exports for years before the tariffs.
And those have been in place since June of 2018, and that has had a tremendous impact on our exports to both the UK and the EU. We've seen a decline in our exports to the UK of 53%.
Locasio says that's a loss of nearly $80 million of exports to the UK over 2 years in a handful of categories.
And when I talk about American whiskies, we're talking about bourbons, Tennessee whiskey, American single malt whiskey, which is a growing category, and American rye whiskey.
Locasio says hopefully the Scotch whiskey tariffs will signal an end to tariffs on US spirits. The US tariffs on Scotch whiskey were part of a 17-year trade tussle with the EU. That's over US plane maker Boeing and European rival Airbus. Former President Trump escalated tensions in 2019, slapping a 25% tariff on Scotch whiskey. Those were suspended earlier this year. Now the US and Britain have agreed to drop those tariffs for at least 5 years. The Scotch Whiskey Association says the last 2 years have been extremely damaging. It says the tariffs caused losses of more than $840 million in exports. Britain's Trade Secretary Liz Truss says it takes US trade relations to the next level. She said they can focus on other things together, including working more closely to challenge unfair practices by nations like China. The Scotch tariffs will be removed next month. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
A rare species of orchid is found in London in a most unexpected place. No wonder botanists are excited. NTD's David English has this story.
11 floors up on a central London rooftop, the Namura Bank is a haven for city wildlife. Ecologist Mark Patterson found some lesser tongue orchids when he was doing a plant survey.
At the corner of my eye, I noticed the flower spike, so I went down to have a closer look at what previously had been just a small bunch of leaves and realised it was an orchid plant.
He wasn't sure if they are lesser tongue orchids or not. 2 orchid experts confirmed they are. Patterson initially found 9 plants, now there are 16.
This is a small plant, it's only got 3 or 4 flowers on it. It's probably a seedling from one of the larger parent plants just behind us here.
While common in the Mediterranean and North Africa, this is believed to be the only colony of lesser tongue orchids in the UK at the moment, and only the second time they have been found here. An expert from Kew Gardens says it makes sense that they made their home on a green roof.
If it were going to end up landing, a seed was going to land anywhere in Britain, then a green roof seems like quite a good place for it to be, particularly somewhere warm and dry, relatively dry like London.
Patterson says the roof of a bank provides a safe and secure place for the orchids. If they were in the wild, they may have been poached already. David English, NTD News.
Rain and thunderstorms are set to sweep the southeast in the next coming days, while northwestern areas will enjoy drier weather with sunny spells. The Met Office says temperatures have dropped across the UK after sweltering weather earlier this week. Torrential downpours could cause flooding in some southern areas and around Birmingham, with 31 flood alerts issued. Still to come, Greece is taking a harder line defending Europe's southern border against illegal migration. Find out more after the break.